shiny, shiny, plastic, black mirror fascist, obsessed capitalist. Are you feeling guilty Catholic? Pretty, picturesque Facebook status, happy family and happy marriage, like the magazine pages, superimposed with Photoshop and happy faces, where cancer doesn't exist and your daddy lives for ages. And the black babies with the swollen bellies are only moments on your telly until you switch it off and put your makeup on. So walk your dog vegan and put your makeup on, posing perfectly pouting and put your makeup on. Hypocrite, selfie, snowflake nation, not making a difference, not voting, not independence, cause it's irrelevant to how your hair grows. You're pretty, and it's a pity that you're prepared to perpetuate your particulars on Instagram and prefer not to educate and overcomplicate an avocado. Like you know the answers to the problems of this world. Meditation and mindful. How about realistically having kids to feed on minimum wage and suicidal without letting your wife know? Cause I don't kill myself for fashion, not a psycho for the sake of it. Hate the name of it, really ashamed of it. I hate your glossy, double tongue, so in circle, talky, trashy magazine. Like Sebastian's dreams, your friends are just all plastic, and it's lonely out there. I don't care about your implants or artificial intelligence, agony ends, chitty chat irrelevance, designer shirt pants. So keep on spending, goodbye pretty people. It's such an ugly ending. Keep pretending, keep on telling yourself that you're so important, like everyone else, like everyone else, like everyone else. Pretty people, pretty people, pretty people, pretty people. Pretty people, pretty people, pretty people, pretty people, pretty people. Pretty people, pretty people, pretty people, pretty people. Pretty people, pretty people. Pretty people, pretty people, pretty people, pretty people. Pretty. For your rights, but you die to lose.
Goodbye pretty people, I'll miss you. All your little giggling and self-serving circles, self-absorbed on shallow surface. All that fucking money and totally worthless, in entirety distractive. A life without purpose, your embodiment is everything wrong. Emboldened by a Harvey Nicks arrogance, echo chamber, industrial multiplier. Factory line features and adjusted plastic artifice, cosmetically cybernetic immortality activist agents. Away with your moisturizing skin armor nonsense, swigging beard lotion against a Georgian backdrop. One sleeved tops are a symptom of civilization in decline. Beggars rocking £100 traders with metallic shell toes. Designer baby accessories with perfect lips and a pre-birth sense of what looks fucking fabulous. It's ridiculous, marvelous, purebred, beautiful offspring of the embassy. Laughing at the wannabes that think that greed is power. The hours tick by and all you want is everything endless. You are now living in the culture with a locust consumer target population pool with fashion, housing, online grooming saloons. Pretty predator class, deadly privilege picking flesh of the populace fast. The terrorist victim look is this year's heroin chic. Superior models to snap them pop-up bomb sites. Pop-up prescription antidepressants, propping up debris arranged in artistical splatter patterns. Little ray of ignorant exception at the tipping point. You drag to the ground by the teeth of natural selection. We defecate upon your form, prone upon your back and bleeding in round the scissor man. Snicker, snack. Your entrified empathy, ultimately empty, dead heart, pretty face, piss upon your memory.
Pretty people, pretty people, pretty people, pretty people. Pretty people, pretty people, pretty people, pretty people, pretty people. Pretty people, pretty people, pretty people, pretty people. Pretty people, pretty people, pretty people, pretty people.
What is up? Welcome to another Sleuth Intuition Live. Today's Sunday, January 23rd, 2022. So what we're going to do today is we're going to get into a case about Keith Hunter Jespersen. Because this case pretty much covers everything we're going to talk about. Signatures, MO, and false confessions. So none of these topics are going to go into too much detail. We're going to devote at least half of the live to the Delphi case. And if somebody wants to call in at any point, that's fine by me. So right after Keith Jespersen, we're going to talk about false confessions. We're going to go into Dennis Rader. His crimes seem to clearly define, what you can expect with an MO versus a signature. So his crimes, he kind of makes those clear. So first thing we're going to do.
Long time ago, there was an Indian princess.
What did she look like?
Well, she was very pretty.
What color was her hair?
Like this.
Not sure if you guys recognize that scene, but it is from the movie The Shack. Yeah, so if you noticed already, Keith Hunter Jespersen, he's already using the signature, the smiley face. He goes over a little bit about his MO. What happened? Yeah, that was very quick. Oh, I guess I'm back up. Yeah, they sent me, that's the first time that's ever happened. Let me get that off the screen. Wow, that was really quick. Just when you think you're being careful, they're like, nope, we got you. Get rid of that, and we'll jump right into this.
It's absolutely breathtaking. You have a lot of fond memories of your dad here.
Right, I do.
After Melissa Moore's parents got divorced, her dad, that long-haul trucker, still made an effort to visit. Summer meant precious time together.
You know, I was amazed at over your lifetime how often he wanted to come to see you. I mean, he wanted to be a dad.
He really did.
Keith Jespersen grew up in British Columbia, Canada, the middle child of 5. He'd always loved camping and the outdoors. Later, when he would take his own children to Oregon's Multnomah Falls, Melissa says it brought out the kid in him.
He'd swim right in here. He'd go under the waterfall, and he would just have fun, laughing, and like nobody was around.
But back on the road, conversations sometimes veered to the grotesque, which Melissa wrote off as fantasy.
One time, as we're driving up the old scenic highway, my father said, "I know how to kill someone and get away with it." So I thought maybe the detective magazines was something he's really into, the forensics and crime, maybe he's into that.
Though she had no idea at the time, turns out what he was talking about was an actual murder, one he had just committed.
The same route that we would take going to the Oregon coast is where he disposed the first victim. Just this way over that direction.
Melissa's dad, Keith Hunter Jespersen, is currently serving 3 life sentences in Oregon State Penitentiary. Prison officials will not allow Jespersen to conduct face-to-face interviews because they say he relishes the attention too much. But we did speak with him numerous times by phone in 2010.
What happened with the first murder?
I picked up a woman at a bar, took her home.
The conversations, extremely candid, full of disturbing details. A killer, in his own words, tells us how and why he committed the first of his grisly murders in January 1990, the very same year his divorce to Melissa's mom was finalized.
We were drinking beer a lot that day.
The woman he met in a Portland area bar was a 23-year-old named Tanya Bennett, described by family as overtly friendly and developmentally slow.
Took her home. I thought I was going to get lucky.
After a night of heavy drinking, the two left the bar and headed back to Jespersen's suburban red brick home, where he lured her and attempted to have sex.
Comments were made and different things, and an altercation happened, and I struck her. I actually had hit her in the face, and for some reason, I just kept on hitting her in the face, and because of that, I feared going to prison for slugging her in the face and causing bodily injury, and so I killed her.
You meant to kill her?
Oh, yes, I did. I meant to kill her to cover up the assault.
You say it very matter-of-factly, with no remorse or hint of remorse.
It is matter of fact, that's what it is.
After strangling Bennett with his bare hands, Jespersen left her lifeless body behind and returned to the bar to coldly continue drinking and establish an alibi. He then drove the body up the old scenic highway and dumped it in the dense brush just miles from where he and his children liked to frolic in those waterfalls.
I put the body up there in the Columbia River Gorge. I had tied a rope around its neck, mostly to... I didn't know how the body reacted when you started moving it.
Days later, Bennett's body was...
Did you guys catch that? If you caught it, punch it in the chat real quick. I want to see how many of you caught that. Up, Corgi. That was quick. So yeah, let me play that back.
Drinking and establish an alibi. He then drove the body up the old scenic highway and dumped it in the dense brush just miles from where he and his children liked to frolic in those waterfalls.
I put the body up there in the Columbia River Gorge. I had tied a rope around its neck, mostly to... I didn't know how the body reacted when you started moving it.
Days later, Bennett's body was discovered, but Jespersen would not become a suspect. And this is where the story takes a strange turn.
Yep.
Out of the blue, a total stranger comes forward to take credit for the crime with a bizarre false confession. This woman tries to frame her abusive boyfriend, telling police he murdered Tanya Bennett, using details of the crime from newspaper reports. Detective Rick Buckner investigated the case.
She actually went so far as to buy a purse and put it in the trunk of John's car, claiming it was Tanya Bennett's.
Having incriminated herself, she now faced prison for something she had nothing to do with.
We had people in custody for a crime they didn't commit.
Meanwhile, the real killer is frustrated and envious of all the attention the pair is receiving for his crime.
I was puzzled. I'd say it was something that just caught me kind of like off guard, especially when I heard that one had confessed to it.
So back on the road, in a rest stop bathroom, he scribbles on the wall. January 21, 1990. Killed Tanya Bennett in Portland. 2 people got the blame, so I can kill again.
I wanted to pause it here. I don't mean to interrupt the video, but I wanted to talk about this because it reminds me of the Anthony Schatz information, which eventually, of course, leads you directly to Keegan Kline. Everybody thinks, okay, Keegan Kline committed this crime. Or that it was possibly, catfish or social media related. But in fact, all they're trying to do is release actual information that Keegan Kline did, in fact, attempt to communicate with the girls, but he was also attempting to communicate with every girl in that area that was probably online. He probably spent hours and hours communicating with everybody, sending email after message after message, just waiting for somebody to bite on that hook. So it wouldn't shock me that early on they find the Anthony Schatz information, they tie it to Keegan, and then they eventually realize that it has nothing to do with the Delphi murders. But the FBI suggests, for psychological reasons, if they release that information, because it is factual, it's a matter of fact that they did release that. And if somebody calls in and says, yes, this guy, messaged me, that's just more charges for Kline anyway. It's like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. They're trying to get him, the actual killer, possibly, to get jealous, to get upset, and to communicate just like this. So I'm going to bring this back just a little bit.
Frustrated and envious of all the attention the pair is receiving for his crime.
I was puzzled. Let's say it was something that just caught me kind of like off guard, especially when I heard that one had confessed to it.
So back on the road, in a rest stop bathroom, he scribbles on the wall. January 21, 1990. Killed Tanya Bennett in Portland. 2 people got the blame, so I can kill again. And he did. 2 years later, he embarked on a killing spree.
What about Lori Ann Pentland?
Yes, I did kill her. Yeah. Her attitude was like her life was all hell and she didn't want to be around, and she wanted me to feel sorry for her, and I just, I could kill you, put you out of your misery, and she said go for it, so I did.
She asked you to kill her?
Well, I told her that, if your life's so bad, why don't you just end it?
He recounts the details of his crimes with a chilling lack of emotion. There was Cynthia Rose.
You killed her over a parking spot?
Yes, I did. It was supposed to be a parking spot.
Number 5 and 6 were Jane Doe's. In 1995, number 7, Angela Sabriz. Killing her, it seems, wasn't enough.
Is she the victim that you tied under the truck?
Yes, she is, yeah.
Why did you do that?
I felt that by dragging her under the truck, that I would destroy all evidence of who her identity was.
See, I think that would fall under a signature, an unusual, unnecessary way of killing somebody for psychological purposes.
Did you choke all of the women?
Yes, I did, yeah.
Why did you choke them?
That's what I had done with the first one, so I never changed.
And then I believe the choking would be considered the mode of operation or the MO in which he commits the crime. That and probably the stalking part of it.
It worked the first time, so I went to the second and third, fourth, and fifth, sixth, and seventh.
It is so gruesome.
Here, let's play that part over again. I kind of interrupted. He pretty much explains that the only reason he's choking these women is because the first time he did it, he was successful, and he just continued to do it. So that's his MO, is he chokes. Now, I'm sure he evolved his method. Maybe he started using things to choke with, but that was his MO. Your MO and your signatures can evolve. At least that's the way I understand it.
Hide under the truck.
Yeah, she is, yeah.
Why did you do that?
I felt that by dragging her under the truck, that I would destroy all evidence of who her identity was.
Did you choke all of the women?
Yes, I did, yeah.
Why did you choke them?
That's what I had done with the first one, so I never changed. It worked the first time, so I went to the second and third, fourth and fifth, sixth and seventh.
It is so gruesome what you're describing. I mean, there's a possibility that these people's family members might be listening to you describing this.
I'm sorry it happened. Wish it never happened. And can we move on?
Can we move on?
Yeah, I mean, come on. I mean, it's done, it's over with.
How would you feel if somebody did this to your daughter?
Well, I would probably search him down and kill him. Yes, I'd like to go back in time and change it and make it all go away and make it all peaches and cream again, but I can't do that. At the time, I could justify each and every one of those murders, and at this time, I cannot.
Wow. So yeah, so we got into the signatures, leaving notes and things, random rest areas. His MO is choking. His signatures are evolving, apparently. And this is the last one I have on this guy here.
Do you recognize this face? If so, you could help solve a mystery.
I believe this is the woman that he did drag underneath the truck.
That has haunted investigators for the past 21 years.
Who is she? Where she came from, why she was in the condition she was at, why was she hitchhiking, was she running from something?
Her name could be Susan, Suzanne, or Suzette. She was approximately 30 years of age, and she could have lived in South Florida or perhaps Nevada. What is known for certain is she was the 6th of 8 victims of a murderer known as the Happy Face Killer.
Back in 1994, the skeletal remains of a young girl were found just off of I-10 at the Holt exit in Okaloosa County, Florida.
Special Agent Dennis Haley is a 30-year veteran of the Florida Department of Law Enforcement.
And it was determined that this girl had been there approximately anywhere between 6 weeks to 3 months. And at that point, we're trying to identify who she is and what happened to her.
While her identity is still unknown, Special Agent Haley found detailed information on what happened to the woman just a year later, when a man named Keith Hunter Jespersen identified himself as the killer. At that time, Jespersen, a former long-haul truck driver, was already serving 7 consecutive life sentences in the Oregon State Penitentiary for the murders of 8 women in several states across the country. When 2 people took credit for and were then convicted of one of those murders, Jespersen's ego and quest for notoriety couldn't let it stand. He began writing letters to the Oregonian newspaper in Portland, taking credit for the homicides he had committed.
He would always sign them with a happy face, so he was dubbed the Happy Face Killer.
Okaloosa County authorities interviewed Jespersen, whose knowledge of the details of this case convinced them he was indeed the killer.
He said that she was from Miami, Florida, that he picked her up at a truck stop at Tampa, Florida. Her name was Susan or Suzette, and she was on her way to Reno, Nevada.
But she would never get there. While at a rest stop on I-10 near Pensacola, Jespersen raped and strangled the woman in the sleeper cab of his truck and later dumped her body in the tree line along the highway.
Back in 1995, we actually had a reconstruction done of the skeletal remains of the skull, and this is what they came up with.
But despite being entered into national databases, she was never identified. And that could be because, according to her killer, the original reconstruction didn't resemble the victim.
Here was what I first started with. This was my layout on the skull.
In 2014, enter Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office forensic imaging specialist Paul Moody, who Haley requested work directly with Jespersen to create an updated reconstruction of the victim.
I managed to start writing him. We conversed back and forth via snail mail for several months. And eventually, a lot of detail came out. He had described this girl to a T.
Jespersen, like many long-term inmates, had become an amateur artist while behind bars, and according to Moody, was better than average.
Well, now I at least know that he can visualize something. He finally suggested, you know, maybe I can draw her. And of course, I was happy with that. Go ahead, give it a shot. And this is what
See, the bad part about this right here is that it's kind of disgusting for him to be, you know, he's getting a sick pleasure out of it while the investigators are getting a puzzle piece that could help the families. But I guarantee he's getting a sick sense, or he's getting some kind of sick pleasure from it. I think he even mentioned something in a letter that they read here. Let's take a look.
I ended up with. He said this was probably, on a scale of 1 to 10, this was probably a 9 as far as he was concerned about what she looked like. This drawing is going to have to fit our skull.
Moody used that drawing with the skull to create a new digital reconstruction, including the torso with eye color, a full-length image with the dress found at the crime scene, along with a leather sash with brass geometric figures, a Native American-like bracelet, and tarot cards Jespersen said she had used on the trip. An examination of her teeth revealed the victim had routinely seen a dentist and wore braces in her earlier years. And when he sent the new digital reconstruction back to Jespersen to review, Moody says the letter he got in return made him hopeful this mystery may finally be solved.
He said, when I opened up the package, it was like a rush of emotion running through me. I saw her again in your picture. He maintains this is her.
Did you hear that?
Running through me, I saw her again.
Moody says the letter he got in return made him hopeful this mystery may finally be solved.
He said, when I opened up the package, it was like a rush of emotion running through me. I saw her again in your picture. He maintains this is her. No two ways about it.
Got a chance to relive it.
That we've got a very good image that we can post to the public and hopefully get their help, identify this girl, and at least get her a name, and hopefully get the remains back to the family.
For both Moody and Haley, successfully solving this case of identity would help answer some long-standing questions and provide them both with some closure as well.
And I can't help but think of what some of these people went through the last hour or two they were alive.
This is one of those cases that bothers you, and I would like to identify this girl before I do retire. Those are the cases that always haunt homicide investigators.
If you recognize this woman, please contact Special Agent Dennis Haley using the information on the screen.
Yeah, so it looks like not everybody was familiar with that case. I thought it was strange that they used the same waterfall. I can't remember the name, Watanama or something like that. Watanama. But that's the same location that they filmed at during the movie The Shack. I played about 2 seconds of it, and they like copyrighted me and like paused the whole live stream. It was crazy. That's never happened before. I kind of expected it to happen afterward, which was fine. But man, that was super quick. It was like instantaneous. But yeah, this guy used a smiley face as a signature. His MO was to strangle his victims. And then he had some strange people falsely confess to the crimes. Actually to his first crime. And it seemed to piss him off. He didn't like that. He got jealous, and it caused him to react. And he went and left more signatures and sent some letters. So the FBI can manipulate these people because, like I always say, the same thing that makes these people go out and think they can get away with murder or just to kill is the same thing that's going to eventually get them caught. But now we're going to get into false confessions and why it's important to, protect that information that maybe only the killer would know. Because just like the case we just covered, the people who tried to admit to the crime, all they did was regurgitate the information that they saw in the newspapers. They didn't have any real detail, but everything was pretty much revealed. So they could explain it, make up backstories, just kind of freestyle the information. They had all the facts. All right. Let's see here. Now, I believe this is a story that was new to me. I just found it. It's about a 13-year-old whose sister actually, she's much older than him, actually committed a murder and convinced her younger brother to admit to the crime. Now, what she did was she told him, hey, look, they're going to put me away forever. They're going to give me the death penalty. You're only 13. Even if they believe you, nothing's going to happen to you. Well, that all turned out to be completely false. Check this out.
I think for a lot of people, a lot of the experiences that you have during your teenage years are things that you won't ever forget, and they were kind of pivotal experiences and moments in your life. Those are some of the most amazing years of your life that I didn't get to have. That time in prison took so many experiences away from me. Christy convinced me to confess at her mother's house. That's when she told me that she was the one who had killed Joey. She started telling me things like, I need you to take the blame for it. I need you to do this. You're 13, nothing will happen to you. They don't punish children. Nothing's going to happen to you. And of course, me, never as much been sent to the principal's office before, believed her. Christy was the only connection that I had to my father's family. As far as I was concerned, she practically walked on water. And so I agreed.
Okay, this is, my name is James Lindsay, and this is Officer Shannon Williams. We were the Octagon County Sheriff's Department, and your name is Tyler Edmonds, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And your age 13?
Yes, sir.
The cops initially called my mom and said, hey, we need to talk to Tyler. They asked my mother to step out of the room, and then another investigator slides in the room when they've got her occupied, and he's holding up papers in his hand, flashing in my face, saying, we already know that you did this. Christy told us all about it. After I said, I don't believe you, they go and get Christy and bring Christy in, who's in an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. Those pressures combined just broke me, and that's when I said, okay, I'll tell you.
James, why can't I be in here with you? Is what I don't understand. Well, I mean, you can talk to him with me here. Do you know what you're telling them the truth, right? I'm telling them the truth. Okay, what is the truth? Oh. Y'all killed him? Tyler Lane. Son, look at me. Did you for real do that, or are you just telling them that?
There are so many facets, I guess, of prison life that you can't really understand unless you've lived it. There are things that I saw and experienced that I don't think any child should ever have to experience.
I'll never forget the first time that I visited with him was shortly after the conviction, and he was crying, and when I went to leave, he was screaming, "Mama, please don't leave me here." It was horrible. That was horrible. But I knew I would be back.
My mother, that is one of the toughest women that I know. I knew that she would never give up.
Tyler's defense was pretty expensive, but I had retired from my job and I had a 401k. I had liquidated everything I had, and I'll be in debt for the rest of my life. But I will be fine, and I would do it all over again. It was all about saving my child's life, and when you go to save your child's life, what is your child's life worth? What is your child's life worth?
She lost 5.5 years of her life too. Every court proceeding she was there, every visitation she was there. And I owe my life to that woman. I can still hear the voice of the court clerk. We, the jury, find the defendant, and there was this dramatic pause, not guilty, and I just fell apart. I mean, it was like having a parked car on top of you, and someone breathed life back into you. There's a Rascal Flatts song that's called "I'm Moving On," and part of the lyrics in that song are that I never dreamed home would end up where I don't belong, and that's kind of how I feel about Mississippi. Is I love Mississippi, but because I think that the only thing that the people there will ever allow me to be is that 13-year-old who went to prison, I don't belong there. I don't feel like I have a place there.
I told him, you probably need to go somewhere where they don't know the notoriety of the case, and you can make a fresh beginning. And that's what he did. He went to Florida.
Considering that my mom literally gave up everything that she had, you know, her life, her house, her husband, her financial security, getting the compensation from the state means everything to me, in the sense that it is my opportunity to say, let me help you in a way that I probably won't ever have the opportunity to do otherwise. For people who say or believe that the state didn't do anything wrong, the investigators and the district attorney took advantage of my age and my naivety and used that to benefit themselves in the form of maybe being able to say that they solved a case. You don't take advantage of children. I don't care what your reasonings are. You know, you don't do that to a child. For some reason, money seems to get their attention, and if for no other reason, at least they know that I didn't just roll over, that I stood up for myself.
Okay, now we're going to get into the psychology behind false confessions. But first, I wanted to address Jason and Crime Dive in the chat. You both are right. For example, in my opinion, they could release, not everything. So on that point, Crime Dive's correct. There are some things that would be very easy for them to release, like, for example, the timestamp. I would like the timestamp on the motion video of him crossing the bridge, of him walking towards the girls on the bridge. I just want a timestamp. Things like that. Dang, sorry to hear that. That's horrible. Okay, now we're about to listen to Mr. Saul Kassan. Now, this guy, hold on. He is a distinguished professor of psychology. So I guess he knows what he's talking about. Let's take a listen.
Nobody believes they would ever confess to a crime they didn't commit. And that's an important starting point, because to confess to a crime you didn't commit is to put yourself in jeopardy of incarceration. It's not something people do. And so when somebody confesses to a crime, everybody, cops, prosecutors, judges, juries, everybody believes that confession. The psychology underlying the study of false confessions is really two psychologies. Why does it happen? And when it happens, why does everybody believe it? Everybody, I think, fundamentally understands that they have a breaking point. Whatever the story is, if stress levels have built, if the suspect starts to think, and this, again, tends to happen over a period of time, that it's in my better interest to confess than to continue to deny involvement, in that case, what happens is an innocent person succumbs to the pressure and agrees to confess. Now, that's an interesting phenomenon because it is a transient confession. It happens momentarily. And as soon as the pressure of the moment is lifted, as soon as a lawyer comes into the situation, immediately there is a recantation. The suspect recants the confession. I was under pressure. I felt coerced. I didn't do this. That's the hallmark of a compliant false confession. As an act of compliance, they agreed to confess, but privately they knew they never did this, and that was the end of that. That, I think, people fundamentally understand. Situations like sleep deprivation, threats made or implied, promises made or implied, can alter the mental calculation of a suspect under stress to make them think that it's their best interest to confess at this point. And the interrogation tactic in particular that puts them at risk for that to happen is lying about evidence. In the United States, police are allowed to outright lie. They're allowed to say to a suspect, we had DNA found on the victim and we tested it and it's yours. Or we found hair within the victim's grasp. We tested it, that was your hair. Or we found the victim's blood on your pillow. Or that polygraph that you agreed to take, you failed it. Now, if you take somebody who's vulnerable to manipulation and their grasp on reality is starting to weaken, and you outright lie about the evidence, you can shake in their view of reality. So when you look at confession evidence, you have to ask yourself, what risk factors were present in the person that made him vulnerable? What interrogation tactics were used that would make anybody vulnerable? And there's a good 100+ years of psychology research showing that when you lie to people about reality, when you misrepresent reality, you can produce profound changes in people's visual perceptions, beliefs, autobiographical memories. The problem is 95% of false confessions contain accurate details about the crime that were not in the public domain. When you have a conversation with somebody, when you interrogate somebody, as part of that process of exchange, you're not just eliciting information, you're communicating information. So if a suspect is broken down to the point where the suspect believes it's in his best interest to confess, he probably has received through the process of interrogation enough facts to make that confession credible. I defy any prosecutor or judge or jury or appeals court to get past that statement. It's almost not possible. I've looked at confessions that have proved to be false before I knew they were false, and I believed them. And I'm a critic of confession evidence, but I believed them. And so that is essentially the problem of how you get people to recognize it. That begs now the question, how do you solve this problem? How do you solve a problem both that the false confession happens and that people can't tell a false confession if they see one? An interrogation needs to be recorded from start to finish. Whether you call it an interview or an interrogation, the entire process from start to finish. It will make police better at what they do. It will make suspects more likely to, it may not make guilty suspects more likely to confess, but I think it might make innocent suspects less likely to confess. And then it will make better fact finders of prosecutors, judges, juries, and appeals courts.
That's pretty good. So basically what I got from his spiel was that it takes two in a false confession. So you got the guy, for whatever reason, you know, he feels urged, you know, might be having some type of mental episode, feels the need to confess. And then you have the investigators who are eager to, to get the case solved. Oh, I saw you earlier, Callie. I didn't get a chance to say hi. Sorry. If you're still here. Okay, so make sure you guys save all these good questions, because we are going to finish out talking about Delphi, and you guys are already dropping some bombs. Okay, so now what I want to do is get into a little bit of signatures versus MO. So I thought Dennis Rader would be the best example of a killer who easily defines the two. So let's take a look here.
The mark of this killer appeared to be the square knots in the bindings and ligatures. When you have a major unsolved case, such as Otero, the case where 4 people of the Otero family were killed, the mother, the father, and the 2 younger children. And then when you have another unsolved case, such as the Bright case, you start looking for connections between the two. And we noticed, interestingly, that the nylon stockings were tied with square knots, such as had been seen at the Otero crime scene.
When you're looking at multiple crime scenes and you're trying to make sense of things, again, the Otero homicide and the Bright homicide occurred less than 4 months apart. And so there is a normal tendency among investigators to look at it and go think possibly it was the same killer, but these cases have significant differences. As an investigator, you always pray that, they lose their ID or something at the crime scene so you can easily identify them. But the most propelling piece of evidence that linked these two was the knot tying. That was a compelling piece of evidence that really wanted you to connect those 2 killings together. The knot tying and the binding cannot be overrated because I mean, it was such a vital part of the torture that this killer employed. These knots, those square knots, just screamed out to the investigators, you know, it's me. I'm the same killer.
So yeah, SD, you did catch that. If you were listening to what they stated, that a lot of signatures are placed there to throw off law enforcement. So I wonder if that's what we're dealing with. You know, somebody with no religious affiliation whatsoever doing, you know, making it appear that whoever committed the crime, you know, is some type of way affiliated with whatever, you know, non-secular connection was left. Yeah, Susan, sometimes when I'm looking at the images, it appears that it's possible, but you got to remember there's a lot of chaos going on in those images, a lot of cascading. And when you have something that cascades, it looks like a larger object than what it actually is. It's really just a small object that's being kind of cascaded, kind of like like an accordion, I guess. So check out this interview. This is with Dennis Rader. It's pretty chilling.
Mind of a serial murderer. The BTK killer terrorized Wichita, Kansas for 3 decades. Now, in a jailhouse interview, you'll hear directly from him how and why he committed these gruesome crimes. Here's Dateline NBC's Edie Magnus.
BTK seemed uncatchable. Everyone wondered who he was, where he was, until just a few months ago, when a most unlikely man who'd lived among them all along, Dennis Rader, was arrested.
I am BTK. Yeah. And I'm the guy they're after, 100%.
This interview, obtained by Dateline after it was done, was conducted by a Harvard-trained forensic psychologist, Robert Mendoza, who performs more than 100 evaluations for criminal and civil cases each year. He was hired by the defense team to assess Rader's sanity.
I got this fantasy. I started working out this fantasy in my mind. And once that person become a fantasy, I could just loop it over. I'd lay in bed at night thinking about this person, the events and how it's going to happen, and it became a real, almost like a picture show. You know, I wanted to go ahead and produce it and direct it and go through with it, no matter what the costs were and the consequences. It was going to happen one way or another.
No one knows for sure why Rader had to kill to fulfill those fantasies. In this interview with the psychologist, Rader dismisses each victim as a project. He says he'd begin by stalking.
Stalking stage is when you start learning more about your victims, potential victims. Went to the library, I looked up their names, that address, cross-reference, and called them a couple of times. Drove by there whenever I could.
And each time he struck, Rader said he was armed with what he calls his hit kit.
And your hit kit contained what? Plastic bags, rope, tape, knife, gun. All those wouldn't be in the kit, they'd be where I could have them in the house and gather them up.
Tools that would come to define the work of BTK. The victims were often discovered bound with tape or rope tied in unusual knots. In his jailhouse interview, Rader blamed his murder spree on that mysterious force he has always claimed was way beyond his control, Factor X.
Something that's, I use it, I I actually think I'm maybe possessed with demons. I was dropped on my head when I was a kid. I've talked to some theological Christian people, and some of those people are really strong. They actually think, well, the Bible says that there's demons within you or can come into you. That's the only thing I can figure out. I have, something drove me to do this. Normal people just don't do this.
You can't stop it.
I can't stop it. It's just, it controls me. It's like it's in the driver's seat.
10 innocent people murdered to satisfy the twisted needs of one selfish man.
And you can see much more of this chilling interview tonight on Dateline at 8/7.
Wow. Yeah, that's one crazy SOB. All right, I'm actually going to play one more video before we close out that portion of the live. This one, it really didn't make the cut, but I mean, I had it ready, so we'll take a look. This one was more geared for information towards the MO. If you listen closely, he kind of talks about how he stalks his victims, how he picked, where he was going to bring them. And it did really remind me of Delphi. So let's take a listen.
Hey, tell me about Northern Kentucky, the girl that you met in Columbus.
Oh, hopefully it restarts. Guess I can't share that one. Well, looks like we're back. Interesting. Wow. So 2 times in one night. I wonder what... I got to figure that out. Well, let's finish with this before we jump into a little clip somebody sent me. Hold on. Let's see here.
I asked him about
Boom. So just to close out the other section, this is from an author called Jennifer Chase. She's an international award-winning author and criminologist. This is from an article she wrote titled Offender Signature versus Modus Operandi. So I'm just going to read this tiny little part here. Sometimes it's confusing for people to differentiate between a criminal signature versus a criminal's modus Operandi when they commit a specific crime. Are they the same? No, they are distinctly different because one feeds on emotional needs while the other is a procedure. Modus operandi is the method that is used to commit the crime, and signature behavior is what helps to serve the criminal's emotional, psychological needs. So I hope that helps anybody who is confused about that. All right, let's jump right in.
Prints.
There were some fingerprints collected.
Do you know if those fingerprints belong to the killer?
That I do not know.
And same with DNA. You have DNA.
Yes.
Do you have his DNA?
Again, we don't know. Right.
I asked him about fingerprints.
There were some fingerprints collected.
Do you know if those fingerprints belong to the killer?
That I do not know.
And same with DNA. You have DNA.
Yes.
Do you have his DNA?
Again, we don't know.
So I'm not exactly sure where to find that. If anybody has a link to that, will you post that up here? Oh, thank you, Ophelia. So let's just jump right in. I'm not exactly sure what that's from. Somebody sent it to me. I think they sent it to me on Facebook. Joe B says, Down the Hill podcast. I mean, he just flat out answered pretty much half our questions right there. It's like they can be testing people that they're questioning with DNA that might not even belong to the killer. Strange. DNA and fingerprints. But yeah, there's going to be DNA and fingerprints everywhere. She said, are they his? He said, we don't know. Well, yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, that was the first time that happened. I'm going to have to look into it. Well, I'm glad they didn't completely shut it down. Oh, yeah. If anybody wants to call in, now would be the time to do so. I should have the link posted or pinned at the top of the chat. We're going on about an hour and 8 minutes. I was thinking like an hour and a half. So that gives us like 20 minutes. we got a question from Blind Squirrel. What is your thought on this Erskine text message? Okay, so this is a sick rumor, and I'm sorry to show you this. Thanks for letting me know. No, that's not her nor Libby. So who is pictured? I'm thinking it's the casket. At one point, somebody put out some images of one of the girls, and they titled it, I think, Libby's casket or something like that. And it kind of went viral, but apparently it was a fake. Yeah, isn't that crazy? They're two different formats. The one on the right you can download online, the other one you can view but cannot download. Yeah, Sunshine, I'm onto like a copyright strike, I think. Yeah, it's possible, Teresa. Let's see what SD's talking about here. In the video, BG isn't wearing gloves. How did he not leave more DNA? From what I have heard, small amount of DNA is not a complete profile. Yeah, I think it's like 21. You have to have like 21 points match. I could be wrong. I keep quoting that, and I don't even know if I'm right. Something like that. But my response to that would be, how do you know he's not wearing gloves? Go for it. What's up, 12 Cut? 12 Cut Pizza is asking, do you think that that's his right hand or the end of a weapon? I don't know for sure, but at this point, if I was going to bet on it, I would say that that is his right hand with a glove, possibly with maybe a brownish colored glove. Possibly, maybe not holding the weapon, maybe just not holding it properly. He might just have it in his hand, just kind of nested in his hand, holding it against his body, and then slowly kind of drops it into like a correct grip, something like that. Well, That's another reason. I forgot to pause it, but during the Dennis Rader video, he had what he called, I think, a kill kit or something along those lines. And he had rope, he had a gun, I think he had tape. Can't remember what else he had in there. I agree with that, Teresa. Not zoomed in. Can try that. Yeah. I mean, who knows what was going on with the whole blue eyes. Maybe she was protecting somebody. La Vista Julia says, what is your thought on Cody Patty and his Facebook remark about 14-year-old pregnant girl? Yeah, I've seen that. I don't know the context. I thought it was disturbing, but I don't know what's going on. I mean, it's not a good look. Yeah, that would be awesome. Just give us the original, blur out whatever you want, and let us, try to mess with it. What's up, Unroyal? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there may have been witnesses. They may not have been close by. Maybe they saw somebody, some movement, in the distance. They got a good look and know what direction they went in. SD asks, Sleuth Intuition, do you think the killer is one of the searchers that found the girls? Also, the brown in the video is supposed to be a deer kill kit. It's supposed to be. How do you know that? As far as being one of the searchers, I don't know. That'd be really creepy. But I mean, that would be a hell of a way to put your DNA all over everything. So imagine if they have the DNA, if your DNA is supposed to be there, what good is it? Just picture the bridge guy sitting in court and they're like, "We have your DNA." And he's like, "Well, I was a part of the search." That's why my DNA's there. And the jury's gonna be like, not guilty, you know. Yeah, it could have just been kind of like a word of mouth type of confusion. You hear one thing yelled from one guy, guy up the hill hears it, passes it on to the other guy up the other hill. That guy takes off running, screaming something, and then there's Weaver. What? They're in the water? And then he turns around and tells law enforcement, they found him in the water. Who knows? I don't know. Daniel asks, what do you think about the FLIR not detecting the girls in the area where they were later found? Are you talking about the drone and the camera and the heat signatures? Infrared? I don't know. I'm not sure. I would have to really know when they put the drones out there, really. Because if the girls died around 3, I don't know if they were naked and cold, wet, wet clothing. They sat there from, I don't, when did they fly the drone? Because if it was around 9 o'clock, you got to assume that they've been there over 6 hours by then. I think it's possible that you may not pick them up, especially if they were covered with some other cold items. I mean, I really don't know. And they also mention that there were 2 deer near the bodies when they found them, and it almost helped them locate it. So I mean, I wonder if there were maybe 2 deer that had found the girls and were laying next to them that night, and it just appeared maybe to be a group. I'm not sure. I would like to see what I wish they would share what they have. I would like to see for myself. Yeah, I wonder if it was an ambushed attack. I often wonder if, there was no sexual intention, sex or intended sexual assault. I'm wondering if this guy took the clothing off of the girls, um, um, to kind of protect himself, to get rid of any DNA. Maybe he cut himself or something. All right, guys, we're coming up to that 5-minute warning. But yeah, in regards to all these witnesses and people in the area of the murders, and no one heard any screams. I don't know. What if they were just, maybe it was a surprise attack from behind? Maybe it was quick with one of them, just to eliminate the whole two-on-one scenario quickly. Now you're on a one-on-one situation, and you can spend more time with whatever it is you're trying to do. If he does have a kill kit, or I don't know, he could just be bundled up. He could have been fishing. He always kind of looked like a fisherman to me. All right, let's see what True Crime Marie is talking about here. She says, I lean towards taking control of one and threatening to harm based upon the actions of the other. Don't scream, don't run. Yeah, I could see that. And that might be why they say they never left each other. I'm not going to leave, don't hurt her. Then he does it anyway. Or imagine this scenario. Bridge guy is extremely territorial, goes into a rage, never intended to kill the girls, assaults one of them to the point of severe injury, with some type of blunt force, boom, maybe hits him with a gun, or, like quickly, like it just happens so fast, everybody's shocked. And he's like, oh damn, what did I do? And one of the girls begins screaming, he panics, right there, he's going to prison. Maybe just freaked out. And if he lived somewhere back there, even within a mile radius, he had a good, I don't know, good hour to get out of there. 15 minutes to clean up a little bit, and then another 30 minutes to get up, maybe even more. Nobody was even searching back there. Yeah, SD. Or once he caught up to one, that's when he attacked the first one and then just continued to chase the other and caught up to her very quickly. Yeah, but sometimes signatures are placed to mislead law enforcement. Truth Bomb says, if he was acting like law enforcement, why would they run? You're trespassing. I'm a cop. Follow me down the hill. Sounds reasonable. Yeah, I can understand. Maybe he starts acting. Maybe it becomes very obvious to them that he is not law enforcement. Maybe he's drunk. Maybe he's trying to assault them. Maybe he's trying to barter with them. They don't do what he says. He hits one of them. And then he panics. Yep. Yeah, what happened? Can I help? Yeah, it's very possible. It's also possible that he had a pre-staged area, you know, with cameras and things, and he knew it wasn't really the girls, it was just more them kind of falling into like a spider's web type situation. And once they fell into, the perfect timing, he brings them to a pre-staged area. So he doesn't really have to leave signatures. They were already there. It's just a thought. All right, guys. We're going to call it a night. I want to thank everybody for showing up, who took part in the chat. We'll do this again real soon. Try to make it a little earlier. And then maybe tomorrow one for the night owls. We'll see. So I appreciate it. Take care.